Hey everyone, welcome back to Inside Game for Friday.
Friday, but it's a sad Friday, but still, people are going to the weekend, so here's an emotionally confused yes for you. Yeah!
Yes! Yes!
Anyway, loot boxes have been in the headlines a lot lately, but they just got some really bad news this week in the UK.
Oh, more bad news. Oh, we all love those loot boxes. Oh. Yeah, so a committee of lawmakers issued a blistering report calling for loot boxes to be banned for kids.
I can get behind that.
Yeah, who couldn't?
They said that the industry's use of loot boxes needs a lot more scrutiny and that they should be regulated under current gambling laws.
No! Oh, the authority coming after our freedoms and our loot boxes. Gosh darn.
Alan Moore was right.
He was.
Anyway, committee members also ripped industry representatives who testified before them, saying they were being willfully obtuse in some cases.
I really love that phrase. So yeah, apparently they didn't pull any punches, dropping that old British bombs on them. All of this could have really serious implications for the future of loot boxes in Europe. Now, let's be clear, the report is not binding, it's a report, it's like a recommendation, but it's not hard to imagine the government enacting such a ban like we've seen in several other European countries.
Yeah, and if more countries in Europe follow suit, we could be looking at a whole new ballgame.
It's about momentum. If the motion is moving that way, it makes it much easier for lawmakers and stuff to get on board as opposed to being the first mover, like the Netherlands or Belgium. God bless you guys. So here's what the report actually said. It comes from a parliamentary committee called the Department for Digital Culture, Media, and Sports, which sounds like it comes from Harry Potter.
So they looked into loot boxes as part of a larger inquiry into what it called, quote, immersive and addictive technologies.
Yeah, the committee is made up of a dozen members of the UK Parliament, and they look about evenly split between the Conservative wing and the more liberal Labour Party. So it was a bipartisan report, which is pretty cool.
Something we can all agree on.
Yeah.
Gambling for kids equals bad. Like, no, this is a politically motivated thing. No. This is just more of a moral issue.
Turns out, like, domineering young minds, maybe that's not the best thing.
You also might remember that this was the committee where, back in June, an EA representative defended loot boxes by calling them surprise mechanics that were actually quite ethical and quite fun. Their quote, not mine.
Right, we all knew that was BS immediately. It's actually pretty great that given enough time, an official panel came to that conclusion as well.
Fantastic.
So yeah, back then EA compared these surprise mechanics to stuff like Kinder Eggs and Hatchimals because those are the exact same thing as a video game, of course.
Right, well, the committee didn't buy that argument at all.
Yes, some bureaucratic systems still work.
And they said that the industry wasn't exactly forthcoming when it came to sharing what they know about how people play games.
Yeah, and this brings me a lot of faith, I gotta be honest. So in their report, they criticized representatives of the games industry being willfully obtuse in answering questions about people's gaming habits.
Yeah. I love a very staunch British person being, you, sir, are being obtuse.
You're willfully obtuse. Sit down.
Parliament looks fun. So they wrote that such data is essential to understand what normal and healthy engagement with gaming looks like.
But it doesn't support my narrative, so I won't put it out there.
They actually added game companies collect this information for their own marketing and design purposes. However, in evidence to us, representatives from the games industry were willfully obtuse in answering our questions about typical patterns of play.
Willfully obtuse.
A little repetitive, but I love calling anyone obtuse. It's a word that we don't use enough today, and we should bring it back.
So the committee added that we felt that some representatives demonstrated a lack of honesty and transparency. Look at that context clues. You can figure out what obtuse means. In acknowledging what data is collected, how it is used, and the psychological underpinning of how products are designed. And this made us question what these companies have to hide.
Yeah, basically they're saying you're not being truthful about how much people really play games, which makes it hard to determine if there is a problem.
Also sort of understanding that you've discovered certain combinations of things that tug on people's mental faculties. Like a lot of early Facebook games like Farmville hit some of this stuff really hard. Games have been using it ever since without any kind of oversight or questioning if it's right or moral or healthy for human beings to be subjected to those kinds of reward loops. And then the report goes on to say that the vast majority of people who play games find it a positive experience. The minority who struggle to maintain control over how much they are playing experience serious consequences for them and their loved ones.
They also listed some examples of gamers who spend a lot on loot boxes. There was the one who spent £1,000 a year on FIFA games, and another who racked up more than £50,000 in microtransactions in RuneScape.
Hell yeah, that's a real gamer right there.
Love their whales, I guess, so.
Oh, Wales in England, you mean? Kill me.
Wales is not in England, you dumb American bastard. Wales is in the United Kingdom.
Now you might be thinking, wait a minute, I thought the UK said in the past that loot boxes aren't gambling. You're right, actually. In the past, the UK's Gambling Commission has said that loot boxes don't qualify as a form of gambling because the rewards you get can't be monetized. Specifically, that means that the Gambling Commission had to say, technically, loot boxes do not match the legal definition for gambling, so we cannot regulate them.
Right.
But they also said somebody really should, which is what's kind of starting to happen right now.
It is looking like the new committee is strongly disagreeing with that previous decision.
Yeah.
And the committee argued that loot box mechanics should be considered games of chance and therefore regulated by UK's Gambling Act.
The head of the committee also asked the government to explain themselves.
Do it, sir!
How dare you!
Explain thyself. Committee Chair Damian Collins said, quote, loot boxes are particularly lucrative for games companies, but come at a high cost, particularly for problem gamblers, while exposing children to potential harm. Buying a loot box is playing a game of chance, and it is high time the gambling laws caught up. We challenge the government to explain why loot boxes should be exempt from the Gambling Act.
That's great. But now comes the sticky part. What should be done? The committee had a bunch of recommendations, including requiring developers to publish and share player data with researchers. That would be interesting and probably a little scary.
Yeah, they also call for basically a tax on the industry to fund research into conditions like gaming disorder.
Cool. Yeah, a couple of cents per microtransaction, but then you go down the legal rabbit hole too of, well, which transactions qualify as that,
right?
Which ones don't. The big recommendation here was to ban selling loot boxes to children. The committee recommended that the European Rating Board, PEGI, rate games with loot boxes exactly the same as it would with gambling software, which is something that we've thrown around on this show too. That if it has a gambling aspect, it ought to be rated M.
It's an adult mechanic. There is a thing with children between certain ages where their brain is developing certain coping mechanisms, and if you introduce gambling to them at a certain age, that could create a problem.
If you're watching this, you're probably one of the many reasonable, rational adults that can handle it or could have handled it when you were a kid. But it's the ones who just have that predilection in their brains and shoving this in their face derails their entire life.
I would never do that. Ooh, new Avengers Fortnite skins. They also suggested that instead of using real money, children should be able to earn credits in-game to unlock loot boxes.
They usually try to mix the two though and say, well, it's not a problem that you can pay because you can earn it too.
Yeah.
But there should be a clear divide.
Mario Odyssey comes to mind.
And in this case, it's actually pretty shocking how both in the mobile and everything like that, Nintendo's been very conservative about microtransactions because they think they see this coming.
Most likely, yeah.
And meanwhile, you got 2K over there pulling out every dirty little trick they can to just squeeze all the
Come
money
at
out
me.
of the rock. Yeah.
Come on, what are you gonna do? We'll put a literal f***ing slot machine in the game. Come at me.
So yeah, it's pretty damning stuff right now. It's exactly what the gaming industry doesn't want to see.
Yeah, and it's part of a larger wave of countries cracking down on loot boxes. We saw it previously with the Netherlands and Belgium, so it's like a virus. It's an idea, it's spreading.
China's restricted the number of loot boxes that players can open every day, which is an interesting.
They also have to
little
reveal,
corral.
I believe, the percentages of what's in there. Here in the US, a senator has also called for them to be banned, and Sweden is investigating the practice as well.
Yeah, but the UK would be the biggest country to ban loot boxes and obviously could have severe consequences for the practice, especially if other countries follow suit.
Yeah, while loot boxes have been around for years now, it seems like most countries just were not paying attention.
But those days are over, or at least coming to a close. Lawmakers tend to get involved when there are news about stories about people spending way too much money on games or their kids doing so. When the kids start to get victimized, then politicians see a lot of political win for protecting the children.
Right.
At least they used to, man. No one seems to care about the kids anymore.
Yeah, meanwhile...
Let's just dump carbon into the atmosphere and eat steaks until we die. Who gives a f*** about the kids?
But meanwhile, the people who really care about the kids, game publishers, actually don't want to see loot boxes touched because it makes them a ton of money.
Of course.
And they don't care if kids are playing it or not because money is money.
And it would be a massive disruption to a lot of industries if suddenly you couldn't sell microtransactions to kids.
Prove it with numbers.
I will. In 2017, it was reported that FIFA's Ultimate Team mode alone was worth $800 million annually. That's almost $1 billion on an E-rated game that has very microtransaction pushed in front of kids.
And last year, the Ultimate Team mode alone made up 28% of EA's total revenue.
Holy crap.
They're a big company. They make a lot of money.
And imagine 28% of your company's revenue is now in total jeopardy just like that.
And obviously, FIFA is huge in Europe, so this has huge implications for EA's bottom line if it goes through.
Yeah, exactly. But other publishers use loot boxes too, and it makes them plenty of money as well. So this has the potential to reshape the economics of a whole industry. So much of games now is designed around factoring in microtransactions and loot box mechanics and things like that. So if those cease to become money makers, then the entire game will shift in the way it's marketed and the way it's developed and the money that's put into it. everything.
It changes a lot. So if loot boxes and microtransactions get banned, that's a big chunk of revenue they're going to give up. And like we said, it was more of a quarter of EA's revenue last year, so this is a really big deal.
Yeah, the industry isn't going to give them up without a fight. And right now, that fight is sending in very calm and happy representatives to say half-truths to a committee and hope that they get to keep doing what they're doing. We've also seen them backing down somewhat on the issue, which is kind of nice, especially when it comes to disclosing the odds of contents inside loot boxes. I think they're hoping that that's all they have to do and the fire will go out. But I don't think that's necessarily the case here.
Yeah, and all three of the big console companies, as well as a bunch of major publishers, have said they will force odd disclosures by next year, which I guess is going to play into the new consoles and I guess, the previous ones now.
I'm thinking that when the time comes to go in front of a committee in the US or whatever, that they can say, no, we're acting in good faith. That's always the big thing. Did you know there was a problem and take steps to prevent it? And they can point to this and say, look, we're already working on it. Please, please, please don't regulate us.
This all sounds very similar if you've paid attention to any sort of video game history. It's a lot like the industry back in the 90s when it came to violence in video games. Regulate itself before more government comes in and tells you what to do.
Yeah, because you don't want senators who don't even know how to use a cell phone or know how Facebook earns money to be regulating how video games are made. That's bad. They should also come up with they need to work really hard on a better argument than calling them fun surprise mechanics. Like, no one's buying it and clearly it didn't work.
Additional revenue options that keep companies afloat. I don't know.
Something.
Just show the chart where games in the 90s cost $120 and now they cost $60, and they show game development costs and
Economy of scale.
Maybe just be more transparent where all your money is going, and that might actually change a few minds. Or hey, it might expose how uneven the pay scale is in the gaming industry.
The problem is that this is the visible evil right now. If it goes away, it doesn't mean that a new evil won't take its place. So what I'm worried about is that game companies no longer get that revenue. What are they gonna resort to next? You're probably not gonna like it, because it's not like they're gonna be like, oh dang, we lost our DLC revenue. Shucks, I guess we gotta go back to making $60 games full of good content for all of our players. Hell no.
Life will find a way.
Yeah, it will. On that note, there's gonna be a lot of people looking here into this video for information. So yes, Rooster Teeth did experience a round of layoffs yesterday. What I want to be clear about is this show is not Rooster Teeth news, but we do owe a word of information about it because we did lose somebody from our team, Nick Kramer, who's worked fantastically. He's made some of the best Super Smash Bros. Tutorials I've ever seen. Just put out a video about Mario Maker this week that is superb and actually taught me a lot about the game. So we'll be missing him. Please go wish him well on social media and check out his work. However, just because that affected our team, you guys deserve to know about it.
I've experienced this a lot in the many years that I've been in this industry, and I'm still not numb to it, and it always sucks when someone loses their job.
Yeah, well said. So yeah, there's if you were coming here looking for some dirt, we don't have any, because this is just business operating, and it's a bunch of honest people trying to make good stuff, and it doesn't always work out. So that's where we're at. But yeah, thank you for watching, and we intend to keep it this. But there will be some disruptions in the meantime. You might notice fewer videos published to the YouTube channel over the next couple of days. Our social publication is going to step down for a little bit, and then we're going to ramp back up as we staff back up. But that's where we're at right now. So thank you for your patience and understanding, and yeah, please reach out with your best wishes and your compliments to people who have invested a lot of time and effort into content that hopefully you've enjoyed.
Yeah. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to Inside Gaming. I'm Nick, and I have been playing a ton of Mario Maker 2 since it came out, and I'm sure a lot of you have too. But have you ever dropped into a crazy difficult level and noticed all those bizarre symbols etched into the background with track pieces and wondered what that's all about? But maybe you haven't even gotten to take the plunge yet, because I gotta admit, that was me with the first Mario Maker.